Okay, it's 12 noon. We'll call the meeting to order. So the clerk, please call the roll.
Yep. Brandy? Here. Mark?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Baylor?
Here.
Kurt?
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly present today. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, brings us to the next item on the agenda. Item 3, approval of minutes of previous meetings. There are none to approve today. Next item is item 4, and that's amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. Entertain a motion to do so or modify it. Member Lynn?
Yes, I would move to amend the agenda and take 17A through D out for this go-around.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. Member Stan Greger.
If it's okay, Member Lynn, if you would clarify, if you wouldn't mind, you're explaining your line of thinking, just for me.
Well, my line of thinking is that dealing with those items individually doesn't do much. To me, if we're going to look at budgets, if we have to cut $200,000 out of a budget for next year, or we have to cut $500,000 or $1 million, each of those are a different scenario on my mind. To set and discuss each one of those individually, to me, doesn't really do much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be sure I understand, so Bob, you're suggesting removing the council discussion items 17 through D?
Okay?
A through D was the
A
motion.
through D is what I said.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last time this stuff was on the agenda, these items were on the agenda, we just took them off without any discussion about them. And I'm just trying to find out a time when all 7 of us are here that we can talk about some of these ideas. There's a couple other items under new finished, items A and B, that we've been specifically asked to weigh in on by the city manager. And while we might not have to hire the police sergeant tonight or give permission to hire a police sergeant tonight, we've been asked to provide the city manager with some direction, and we continue to not want to do that. I was thinking that by putting those 5 or 6 items that are part of the discussion or part of some of the questions I have, I don't find a time when we can talk about things that are important to the community. We all know that there are going to be cuts coming, and I've said this before, but I think there should be a time when we're all here to at least let the community know what some of our thoughts are. The last meeting, we had all these items on there and they got taken off the agenda. And while there are a lot of things that are important in this community, the thing that we talked about most at the last meeting was the safety of the troll bridge out at Sandy Beach. Well, that's very important to some people for their quality of life in town. Whether or not we have a full police department and whether or not we're making as much money as we can through the assisted living facility, and whether or not we're going to hire a firefighter to help things up at the fire department. I think this is the time of the year that we need to have the discussions about just some of the possibilities. And right now, we're letting the state, or the assembly is letting the state mandate when and where we can talk about things. We could get to the point where the state budget doesn't come out until April, May, or June. And then we still haven't had the discussion. We've had no time to kind of prepare for things. We're acting we're responding as opposed to, acting with the community's best interest in mind. And I think this is the time of the year, January, February, and March is when the time we have the time to discuss these things and some of the implications to the community. So I'll be voting against this motion.
Is there any other discussion on removing these items from the agenda? Member Mucci mentioned we didn't talk about these at the last meeting. I think we had a little bit of a discussion last meeting when we amended the agenda to remove these items, and these were removed as well as two items that he referred to that are action items under new business today. I'm still of the mind that I can't vote for these until I have more information from the state, what they're going to do with the budget. And the 13th is when the governor comes out with his proposed budget amendments, and like Member Mucci said, we all know there's going to be cuts. So I would like more information before we discuss these. They're all important to me as well as members of the community, but I think I need more information personally. So anyway, is there any other discussion on this amendment to the agenda? Will the clerk call the roll?
Brandy?
Hold on, I guess is for amending it?
The yes is to amend the
Yes.
agenda to remove 17A through D. Sorry.
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Okay, items 17A through D will be removed from discussion items today on the agenda. So that brings us to approval of the agenda as amended. If there's no other motions, is there any other motions to amend the agenda any further? Clerk, call the roll on the amended agenda.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda as amended today. Hopefully we're not being too confusing here, but we'll strike those discussion items. Public hearings, there are none today, so we'll move to item 6. That's bid awards. There are no bid awards today on the agenda. And that brings us to item 7, which is persons to be heard with items related to issues on today's agenda. Please come forward, state your name and who you represent, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Martinson. I represent myself, I guess. We'll talk about the land swap with Petra, otherwise being a lousy idea. The building. Has anybody out here ever bought a commercial boat, an old boat, and started to fix it up? I have. And it just ends up being an endless amount, putting money into it, and you end up with a lousy product in the end. And I can see this happening with this building. It's 40 years old. I mean, it's going to need a lot of work. And probably quicker just tear down and rebuild, and cheaper. The new construction next to the Harbor Shack, that would be a wonderful place for a little shop for the boys. Put a little dock area out front with an electric hoist, lifting things up and down. Beautiful. The Dolphin, along with the swap, I have 40 years experience in marine construction, and right now there's no bid, there's no actual plans. The latest price tag is $400,000, which is probably about right, but from experience tells me add 20-25% to that, and assuming everybody thinks Tampico is going to be in town to do it, if they're not, double it. Easy. The police officer, back in the day, I remember there was a couple cars and a few police officers, and that was great. Well, it's a different world today. I know we can't afford it, but we get more drugs, thefts, and probably just red tape alone is probably occupying these officers' time. Now, I would like to see, and I would almost bet, I haven't seen the numbers, that you're probably going to be spending more in overtime than you are, or as much, than a new officer would be. And less efficient. You're going to be overrunning these guys. But, something needs to be cut to offset this officer's position. And you just got to go down to your budget and say, is this more important than public safety? Is this more important than public safety? And I bet you'll come to a quick decision. And to me, that would be a very simple solution. That's it.
Thank you for your testimony today. Is there any other visitors or people, persons to be heard today with items related to things on today's agenda? Seeing none, I'll move to item 8. Persons to be heard with items unrelated to items on today's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience? Okay. Moves us to board, commission, and committee reports. There are no reports there today. The consent agenda, no items there. That brings us to report of other officers, and we have a report from the CEO from the medical center.
All right, good afternoon. Phil Hofstetter, PMC CEO. I just have two announcements. The first one is pretty exciting in this fiscal climate of uncertainty, but we're pleased to announce that PMC is the recipient of over $200,000 award with the Denali Commission. It's towards the master planning of deciding, what to do with our aging facility, and it involves structural engineering, debt capacity analysis, and more of a market line analysis as well. So it's a starting point. It's really exciting. You're probably the first to share the news publicly. So look forward to involving the borough and the community in that process. The second announcement is tomorrow. It will be our second community cafe. It is at 2:30 p.m. and at 6:30 p.m. And we hope the community and the borough will attend. We are gearing towards technology and telehealth. Again, when we talk about some of the fiscal issues coming up, some of the innovative concepts in healthcare regarding, involve technology and telehealth. We are moving towards some of these programs, and we would like to have community input as we develop those programs. And those are exciting topics, so learn a little bit about telehealth, learn about some things that we're already doing, and then learn, and maybe actually we will learn from you to see where we want to go with that. So that's at 2:30 and at 6:30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the good news.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Excuse me, the cold is lingering here. Report of other officers. Trey Atchison, the CEO from SEPA, was supposed to come in today, but the plane from Seattle was delayed to Ketchikan, so he couldn't make it. He emailed the manager in a letter. I'll just go through it real quick. My apologies for not being able to attend your assembly meeting today. This morning's flight out of Seattle was delayed by a couple of hours due to snow. We started a Swan Lake unit on Friday and have been shipping most of that generation north all weekend. This was done preemptively ahead of single-digit temperatures to add spinning reserve on the system and to help ensure we were able to meet combined peak loads for Petersburg and Wrangell. Both Tyee units were lightly loaded over the weekend, but unfortunately one of them tripped off while troubleshooting a transformer alarm resulting from cold temperatures. We were able to pick up the lost with spinning reserves, and there was no interruption in power deliveries to the north. The KPU system did shed a couple of feeders as a result of the event, and we are working with them to determine if relay settings can be adjusted to avoid a reoccurrence. Excuse me. The current plan is to continue to limit sales out of Swan Lake to KPU to preserve inflows at Tyee and Swan for the northern communities. Actual weather conditions are trending colder and drier than NOAA predictions, which is slowing recovery. Lake levels is the recovery he's referring to. We are in a period where outside temperatures will dictate the reservoir draft rates as well as inflows. We'll be discussing conditions in greater detail during our weekly operations plan call-in tomorrow. And the current conditions at the two lakes is Tyee lake level is 1273, that's feet above sea level, and Swan Lake Reservoir is at 288. That's actually since last Tuesday a gain of 3 feet, and Swan Lake and a loss of 1.5 feet in Tyee. And we will be holding a work session on reservoir management at our scheduled SEPA board meeting in Ketchikan on February 28th. And he says if there's any questions, just please give him a call. So that would be Trey's report. The next report today is from PEDC.
Hi, Liz Cabrera here. I just passed out a one-page handout that provides an overview of a definition of economic development, a little bit about the PEDC, and its nonprofit status, our mission statement, and then kind of a breakdown in different categories of what economic development looks like in Petersburg and what we work on, broken up into different categories. I could go through all of that if you would like. I'll also point out that there's actually 5 members of the PDC board in the room right now, and that's Steve Giesbrick, Mark Jensen, Brian Lynch, Megan O'Neill, and Glo Wallen. So we can go through this. I can answer questions. I wasn't really very clear on what exactly you wanted for information or to talk about. So,
Is there any questions of the Economic Development Director, Liz Cabrera, today? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, under your infrastructure project, you've got it listed for the community cold storage. How many tenants do we have in the community cold storage?
we have about 100 customers, and that includes business and also individuals, but varies more. In the summer we have more, in the winter we have fewer.
Okay.
The other one that I had, Mr. Mayor, is can you give me an update on where we are with the Scow Bay small vessel haul-out and workyard?
Sure. So we have a contract under PDC with P&D Engineers, and they're working on completing a preliminary design and also doing all the permitting work on that project. So by the time they're done with that contract, we should have truly a shovel-ready project. At the same time, we're pursuing federal funding from different grants. These are all discretionary funding grants, which means, well, beyond really being very competitive, it's a process in D.C. that the Secretary of Transportation has the discretion to spend the money anyway, more or less, that she wants to, given the guidelines of the grant. So these are pretty complicated transportation grants that we're pursuing. I'd like to think that we're competitive, but we're trying to be as competitive as we can. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But so in support of trying to fund the actual project, those are the grants that we're pursuing. In addition, we have $500,000 that voters approved from the Economic Fund, but we're not interested in tapping into that, or not planning to tap into that until we actually had grant funding to match it. So all of the design work is actually being paid for out of PEDC funds at this point.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And could I also get an update on where we are with the visitor industry working group?
Sure. We've had all of one meeting with a portion with the steering committee and a few other of the members, and we're still trying to round out what that working group is going to look like, parameters and meeting schedule and all of that. So,
yep. Thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Cabrera? Member Walholder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Liz, this is kind of an obscure kind of question, but underneath community marketing to attract outside dollars, I see that we're working with Wrangell and a few other organizations there, Alaska Magazine, Lonely Planet, Roamers, the Miami Herald. Can you tell me how you guys decided to pick the Miami Herald?
well, they picked us.
Okay, that's good to know. And how much are we spending on that?
So this co-op marketing with Wrangell, it's with the Alaska Tourism Industry Association. They host what's called Roadshow once a year, and they bring in travel writers from different venues, and these are a list of some that we've interacted with. So either Wrangell representative or a Petersburg representative goes to the show. We talk about what's new in our community, what we're all about, and then try and get some of these travel writers to come visit our towns. And so if they want to come visit, usually what happens is ATIA picks up the cost of getting them into the state, and then between Wrangell and Petersburg, we'll pay the cost of moving them into between the two communities. Sometimes we just pay the cost of hosting here in Petersburg, and then in exchange, we'll get an article or 2 or 3 or 4 in the different places that they write for. And these are the listing of those magazines, or just different places that articles about Petersburg and or Wrangell have shown up in the last couple of years, or will show up in the next year or two.
Just to follow up here, Mark.
Sure.
His follow-up statement there. Yeah, I was just curious why, Miami Herald, it's about as far away from Petersburg as you could get in the and still be in the United States. So anyway, I was just curious how we got that there. But thanks for your
Well,
explanation.
and the writers, they have, so they work freelance, and they also have contracts with different newspapers and magazines, and so they'll write a story, and whoever buys it from them, that's where it shows up. And so the Miami Herald one is he writes for quite a different number of venues, but they actually picked it up at the Miami Herald, and there was, I think, 2 stories about Petersburg in the Miami Herald, so, which is different.
Very cool. Thank you.
Any other questions of the Economic Development Director?
I do.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are all the items that are listed under the community marketing to attract outside dollars, are those all things that are going on right now? Or are those lists of suggestions?
Some are going on, some are things that we've done, but they're not suggestions, no. They've either occurred or are occurring.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so under the business development, now are these things that the borough is doing to help local businesses or new businesses starting in town get things off the ground? Is that what those are for?
Yes.
Yep.
Or
And the last question-
grow a business,
Okay.
Doesn't have to be new.
And the last one I have, Mr. Mayor, is the workforce development. Are those suggestions you're looking for that would help businesses, or?
These are not suggestions, these are things that we actually have done or are doing.
Okay.
None of these are suggestions.
Okay, so could you explain to me where the daycare, I know where the daycares are in town, but how is the city expanding daycare facilities?
So we wrote 3 different grants to help expand the Children's Center. 2 from Rasmussen, which amounted to about $50,000, and 1 from CrossIt, which was $20,000. And then PDC also supported that expansion with $10,000.
Okay.
So supported it with cash
Okay.
and grant cash. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions from the Assembly? Okay, I have one for Liz. This Visitor Industries Working Group, so that is kind of a committee for, just subcommittee or whatever of PEDC then, in a sense?
Right. The PEDC board asked me to bring together stakeholders in that industry to talk about future of the tourism industry.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there's no other questions of the Economic Development Director, we'll move to the Chamber of Commerce as the next report for today.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Dave Kensinger, and I'm representing the Petersburg Chamber. I gave you a short handout that lists the things that we are currently doing or have done in the past year. I'll just read our mission statement because that pretty much sums up what the Chamber does. The Chamber of Commerce represent its membership, which is primarily composed of the retail community in town, numerous nonprofits, basically anybody that wants to join. That's a hint. We're having a membership drive right now. And I should add that the borough is a member of the Chamber as well. And what we try to do is we try to seek to promote a strong, diversified economy and improve the quality of life in Petersburg through leadership, service, marketing, and communication. So that's pretty much everything. Specifically, what we are trying to do, and you have to realize we're a volunteer organization with 1 part-time employee. So we are limited in what we can do. But what we have tried to do is we try and poll our membership and find out what they want to have done. What projects they want us to take and what they want us to do. And when we get that information, then as a board, we try and work on it. We have board meetings the first and third Thursday of every month. They're open. Anybody that would like to attend, they're more than welcome. And what we try and do is we try and combine everybody in town and get their ideas together to give it a little bit more push sometimes. We also provide connections with the Alaskan Tourist Industry Association, Southeast Alaska Tourism Council, and then we also work quite closely with a lot of the projects that Liz was talking about with PDC. And then we're also a member of Southeast Conference. And what we do is
every member is known as an investor in Petersburg's future. The things that we do day to day, or I should say our administrator Mara does day to day, is she responds anytime anybody makes an inquiry about town. If they're looking to move here, if they're looking to start a business here, if they're just going to visit for one night to the visitor center, we give them whatever information that we can, and we've changed how we do that lately. And as everybody knows, a lot of things have changed in the world with the advent of the internet. Then we also try and provide networking opportunities for our members, and we do cooperative advertising. We have, and this has been a big project that we've had the last few years, is improving the website. If you have an opportunity, go online, petersburg.org, it'll take you to the Chamber of Commerce's website. And all the members in the Chamber can have a link on that. So that goes, if you have a bed and breakfast, a hotel, a lodge, it's one platform where if people are looking for information, if they're from Miami and they want to find out what's going on in Petersburg, they can go there and then they can find referrals to all the different and individual businesses in town. The other thing that we do a lot of, and we do this to assist you guys, the Assembly a lot, is anytime there's legislation that you need to have support on, we'll write letters. Some of the ones we've done, and we do yearly, of course, is Essential Air Service for Alaska Airlines. Drive down dock funding, the recent efforts for the Petersburg land bill, the pharmacy bill, and then the one that I've been involved in and that the Chamber's been helping me out is been on Alaska Marine Highway Steering Committee, which has been an ongoing effort for 2 years, the last 2 years. And we have numerous meetings, so that's kind of one of the ways that we're trying to maintain some transportation in the city. I know we're being very successful at it, but we're still trying. And then we have several other fishery-related support levers. And then the other thing I think a lot of people know in town, a lot of the community events, Sons of Norway, Little Norway, 4th of July, we coordinate those two events, try and make them happen. We try and provide a platform for a lot of the nonprofits in town. If they're going to do a gaming event, we'll let them use our gaming permit. We've tried to back off on some of our activities in raising money through gaming so that we do not impact some of the other organizations. We've also partnered with the museum to try and help them make a little bit more money for their operations. So we're pretty much open to a wide number of ideas, and if you guys have anything you would like to see us do as a member, you're more than willing to give us some marching orders, and we'll take it in front of the board. So the other thing I'd like to say is we're going to have our annual banquet, which is not this weekend, but the next weekend, February 16th. And Phil, the CEO from the hospital, is going to be our guest speaker, and we're going to put him on the hot seat there, and he'll be there to answer any questions that the membership has. Lee and Heidi are catering the banquet. You guys are all definitely invited. Senator Stedman's going to be there. He'll be giving a few brief comments, and hopefully Representative Christ-Tompkins will be there as well. And then Sunday morning, before they go back up to Juneau, we're going to try and have a community question and answer period for them. The budget is going to be out February 13th, and it's going to be very interesting to hear what they have to say. It's going to be a big shock, I think, for everybody in the community. So it's a timely event, and y'all are definitely invited. And if you have any questions, just let me know. If you need a ticket, Mara's selling them. And then also you can pick them up at Lee's.
Okay. Is there any questions of Mr. Kinsinger? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the chamber board meets the first and third, what day?
Thursday.
And the other last
At
question.
noon, sorry.
Noon. So the last question I have here is, what's the Is it a financial relationship with the Forest Service, or is it just a real estate, or what's the Forest Service jointly operates the visitor center? How does that all work?
Well, I should say you're also a partner with it too. Many years ago, one of the main deals and needs that was identified in town was to have the visitor center, and the Forest Service gives us about, I believe, around $15,000. And then, so we more or less split the cost of it. We've changed a lot on how the visitor center is operated because we've had to, as most organizations in town, we've had to tighten our budget. And particularly one of the other main events that we've done for years that we were unable to last year was the salmon derby. So it's impacted our budget quite a bit. So yeah, we're in a partnership with them, and they provide us. It's pretty detailed anytime you do anything with the federal government. They want to know every cent and every dollar. So if you would like to take a look at those, look at that information, it's available.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Okay, that brings us to the mayor's report today, fairly short. Second meeting in February has been rescheduled. Just a reminder, it'll be on the 25th of February at 6 p.m. Work sessions coming up. There is a solid waste recycling work session scheduled for February 4th. I thought it was the 6th, actually.
Thank you.
So to correct that to the 6th at 6:30 p.m. On January 30th at 6:30 p.m. we had the future planning work session. That was very informational. AML conference, myself, Member Lynn, and the Borough Manager will be attending the AML conference in Juneau, February 19th through the 21st. That's the reason for the change in the second meeting. We had an update earlier in the meeting, just shortly ago, from the PEDC Director. The last board meeting, the news was brought up at 2% increase in the population of Petersburg. Second year in a row, I guess, the population has increased. It's 3,198 people now. Like Liz spoke to, the Visitor Industry Working Group held their first meeting January 29th, and that group, the holiday kind of slowed down the organization of the group. People were slow to respond, of course, over the holidays, maybe in a food coma or something, but we do have a start. There's 5 people signed on as the steering committee: Nancy Berg, Maura Latumsky, Glo Wolin, Chelsea Tremblay, and Mindy Anderson. Those 5 nominated the second 5, and they're still working on hearing back from them. So far, commitments were from, I believe, Ron Bushman, Scott Hersey, and Scott Roberge. This group will choose the next 5 members of the working group. Organization-wise, the idea is to have each steering committee member pick a focus area, quality of life, infrastructure, etc., and then use the working group to narrow down issues, gather info, and make recommendations that could be implemented locally. A group such as this, where you are striving to reach broad agreement, only functions if everyone agrees to work in good faith and not undermine efforts by seeking their own solutions outside the group. And that was from our last PEDC meeting. Secure Rural Schools Program. There's a letter in our packet today that we received from Senator Murkowski, and she thanked us for our appreciation of what she's doing, and they're still working on keeping that funding coming towards us, or trying to revitalize some kind of logging in the region so we don't have to depend on those subsidies. SEPA update, I guess I don't really have much to add since Trey sent us that letter, and tomorrow, like he said, is the next weekly scheduled call-in by the 3 member utilities and the 2 hydro facilities. So I've sat in on the last 2. They're quite interesting, how they decide who's going to burn diesel or how they're going to adjust the load. So that's it. If there's no questions, we will go on to the manager's report. Okay, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sandy participated in an executive committee teleconference for the Southeast Regional Emergency Medical Services Council and a crisis response meeting for the Petersburg School District. Thank her for that. Building official will be out of the office until February 25th. Building and plumbing plan reviews, new permits, inspections, and occupancy certificates are not available during absence. Electric inspections continue to be available through Power and Light. The proposed zoning map is scheduled for public hearing at the Planning Commission on February 12th and March 12th. A letter with the hearing schedule and draft map was mailed to all property owners in the Service Area 1 in early January. The link to the interactive draft map is also on the Borough website. Winter conditions are ongoing. Snow watch policy is in effect with sanding and plowing as needed. We're asking customers to continue to be observant and protect their water meters from freezing where possible as well. Public Works crew assisted the Sanitation Department by hauling concrete blocks to construct a temporary barrier wall around the conveyor pit at the baling facility. The old conveyor was demolished by the streets crew and removed from the building in preparation for the upcoming baler replacement. That project development is underway, and we should have an RFP to the Assembly, hopefully I think at the next meeting. Sanitation operator Alex Maldonado has given his 2-week notice. He'll be leaving the department in February. He's been great, asset to our crew and the community, or the department. We wish him well in his future endeavors. We'll be looking for another driver in the coming weeks. Chris will be out of the office February 11th through the 14th while attending the Southeast Conference Mid-Session Summit in Juneau, representing the Borough and CSWA. Staff will be soliciting a proposal for our periodic safety inspections at the City Creek and Cabin Creek dams. These must be performed every 3 years by qualified engineers. The inspections will likely take place this summer. Wastewater staff has been painting a reclaimed metal structure from a pump station project. Prior to erecting this structure, we're going to use it as wood chip storage for the composting program, so that'll keep the chips a little drier. Wastewater also received the replacement inspection camera last month, has been able to use it to good effect. We were able to better investigate the sewer service at the Muni building and found some misaligned pipe joints in the service ladder out near the main. We're still working out a plan with Public Works for a remedy. That'll likely be a summer project to go through that. Design work is back underway for the Scow Bay Pump Station No. 1 replacement. The project was delayed to sort out the best approach to the work, but P&D is back to producing construction documents with the goal of building this in 2019. We have a project to replace the poorly graded sewer main on Casino Street utilizing an ADEC loan. It is moving forward. The designer, Harai and Associates, will be working through the process to achieve an approval to construct from ADEC and helping with the bidding process in the spring. Future wastewater project RFPs that are in the works are Pump Station 4 force main replacement design, and again, that'll come before the Assembly when it's ready. McMillan Jacobs is working hard to finish up their analysis of the various proposed improvements in the recommended capital list for the Blind Slough Hydro by the end of February. Power and light staff successfully dealt with some small outages due to heavy snow on the lines earlier in January. Thanks to them for being willing to get out in cold weather and keep everything going for folks. The proposals for the North Harbor automatic meter project were due on Friday, February 1st. The project will test the radio coverage for automated electrical metering in the extents of the harbor and deploy new AMI meters in the entire North Harbor. The evaluation committee will set about reading and scoring the proposals in preparation for an award recommendation to the Assembly. Lots of FERC reporting taking place. Staff is doing a great job in keeping all of this squared away. One of the requirements of operating 2 different dams, and Sue and the admin staff, as well as Carl and his folks, do a great job of keeping all on top of it. And future power and light RFPs are in works, so the downtown street lighting replacement and the Superior building roof replacement, both of those will be brought to the Assembly for your decision on whether we should proceed or not. And that's it. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Steve, question on that pump station number 1. When we went out when we went out with RFP, we did not get what we wanted, or where was the...
Chris, do you remember on Pump Station 1? Sorry. I don't have the details.
Pump Station 1 was rehab just because it was so old. The pumping system was worn out.
But did we go out with an RFP on it first, and then we got no bids, or because that's been in the mill for a while, is my question.
That Pump Station 1 project was done a while back. Are you talking about Pump Station 4?
It's Scow Bay Pump Station.
Scow Bay Pump Station 1. Yeah, no, that pump station is undersized. It floods frequently. It's when it was originally built, it wasn't sized for the amount of flow that occurred later as a result of development out the road. And I'm trying to remember the process here because Carl's been involved with that more lately.
But Carl was sick today. He had the details on it, but I can get those to the assembly.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, does that answer your question? I guess you'll get an answer.
Yeah.
Any other questions of the manager's report? Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
That moves us to unfinished business. The only unfinished business item is petrol negotiations. So without seeing a motion, I would entertain a motion, since the motions need to be made in the positive, to continue negotiations with Petrol Marine. So that's what if someone wants to make that motion or modify that, we'll move forward.
Second.
Member Mucci, did you make a motion? Yes, I did. Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walherter to continue negotiations with Petrol Marine. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll be voting for this today. I think I know from my own perspective, when we got into this, there would be, just as the term says, a negotiation, not necessarily resolved quickly or necessarily efficiently, as many negotiations are. And I think it's prudent to let the manager continue to negotiate and see where we can come out on the other side of this thing. See if we can get any closer to a desired outcome. Thanks.
Any other member? Walherter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, are we also going to go into executive session to be able to discuss the negotiation terms?
Depends on how the vote comes out on this motion.
So, I mean, if we do say yes, that we're going to continue negotiations, we're not going to go into executive session?
We will go into executive
okay, yes.
session
Okay,
to give direction.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah,
okay. Good.
Any other discussion?
Sure.
Member Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to be voting for this. I want to see the negotiations continue. I think both of the letters that we have in here, it's kind of a start of the conversation. I think the conversation needs to continue, and I think if this passes, we'll get to discuss this more in depth during the executive session. So I'm going to vote for it.
Any other discussion? I'm not going to be voting in favor of this motion today, and the reason is the response letter from Petrol Marine, which is included in the agenda. It didn't seem like they were in favor of monetary contributions to the borough. I know they were going to, if there was a difference in appraisal, they were going to, the first figure was $125,000. They were willing to put that money into the Dolphin project as long as we completed it within 30 months. Then P&D came out with an estimate of $400,000 for that Dolphin. So that would put this borough in my opinion, a $275,000 or whatever the number is, $275,000 liability there, as well as if we terminated the lease, which has a 24-year time left on it, if they were to pay it off, according to what the manager told me, at once, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, would be $400,000. If it goes the term of the lease, it would be $640,000 in lost revenue. Are those correct figures?
Yes. Present value of that money is just under $400,000 if you had it in the bank and collected interest for the remaining 24 years. Or if you just want to look at it as 24 years of payments, it gets to the $600,000 number. So
okay. Those are the reasons I'm not going to be voting to continue the negotiations today. So any other discussion? Member Walherter.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I just want to make a clarification here for the listening public that $400,000 P&D estimate was just back of a napkin. That was not an official RFP. So That's just a round number that's been batted around. Only time will tell what that number really will be, so that was my only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Randy?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Mark?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, 4-3 vote. We'll continue negotiations. We'll discuss that in executive session. Members Lynn, Morrell, and myself were opposed to continuing. Okay, let me get back to the agenda here. Okay. New business. Item A, and that is replacement of police sergeant position. I would entertain a motion to approve that, or a motion to move down that road. So moved. Motion's been made by Member Meteor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Norheim. So any discussion? Okay, so this would actually be a vote, if I'm correct, to fund a second sergeant's position in the police department.
Could we?
Member Walter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to put this out there, as I'm definitely not opposed to filling every position of the police department, but I really would hate to hire somebody now and then later on come and see what the state budget is going to be, and then have to then let that person go or let somebody go. And so it's like I said, I'm not opposed to this. I want to wait until after the 13th when we see what his budget is and what the likelihood of his funding is towards the police department before I can kind of make any educated guess on this. Right now, it looks like the numbers are there, that he has the funding. I've talked to him about it. Talked to the chief about it, and they are going to have a tremendous amount of overtime. Right now it's going to be way more than the new police officer would be. So that number's correct that Mark Martinson was talking about. And but again, I don't want to hire somebody and then later on tell them that they're not able to work for us because we just don't have the funding. So I'm going to have to wait until probably February myself, at the end of February, to make that more educated guess. So I'm going to be voting no on this because of that reason.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I'm about the same place that Member Walhuter is that I think the chief's got some good ideas that I've talked about, but at this point, I can't see even going out for even recruiting until we have a better handle on the budget, because if we were to lose both the jail funds and we were to lose a couple $100,000, this position we have to look at changing the way we do business, I think.
Member Norheim, you had a comment?
I was wondering if the chief could speak more to this, or is that...
I think we have all the information, but if you have a specific question?
No, I was just hear his opinion on it, unless this is it.
Member Stanton Greger?
Yeah, question for the manager. Please and thank you, Steve. Perhaps I've been, in my own thinking, made a faulty assumption, Steve. So for the sake of argument, the Assembly approves the hire of a sergeant today, and then budget comes down from the state in terms of poorly, simply put. Is that a legitimate concern, that the idea of hiring somebody and then having to let them go shortly down the line? I mean, I've assumed that it's the case. I guess would like to confirm that for myself.
Yeah, it depends on what the state does. I mean, as the mayor kind of referenced, it's all in the level. I mean, if the state cuts, $50,000, we can, and what the Assembly agrees to cut, we can probably find money elsewhere. If they cut, $500,000 or $1 million, it's a different animal. And so, yes, the way we would process it, if it's a big number, and we're looking at that position or a position in the police department going away, it'd be the last person hired.
Yeah.
It's based on seniority. That's a union contract thing that we have no real say at this point in. So the last person in the door would be the one we'd be talking to.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. That clarifies for me.
Any other question or discussion?
Thank you. I just wanted to close my thought with that. I mentioned this at the last meeting, and Member Wohlhuter mentioned that this afternoon. I'm wrestling with that because to be Captain Obvious here, we're living on an island in Alaska, and the idea of bringing somebody here off-site it's a big risk for somebody, even in the best of circumstances. And I'm wrestling with the potential heartache of saying hello and goodbye to somebody, and it wouldn't be good to do to somebody. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Member Meteor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, this is just filling a position. This isn't hiring a new person. This is just filling a vacant position that has been budgeted for. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so by not having this position filled, as far as I can tell, we're spending up to close, I think 2018 we spent over, $155,000 in overtime. On 2017 it was $133,000. 2016 it was $94,000. We're spending like $100,000 every year on police department overtime, and it would be nice to kind of reduce that. I know you're always going to have overtime in the police department, but I mean it's a ton of money that we're spending on overtime because we don't have enough, as far as I can tell, enough people to fill all the spots. And if we're not going to fill this position, I think the police department needs to figure out what they're going to do, if they're going to hire a police officer or they're just going to try and put their schedule together based on not 24/7 police protection. And the overtime money is it's quite shocking to me, so I'm going to be voting for this. But thank you.
Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the chief, a specific question, if I could. I don't realize it didn't occur to me before, and you've heard Member Wohlhuter and myself voice our concerns over the risk of bringing someone up here. And I should have asked you directly: Are you comfortable with that level of risk at this point?
Well, what I would like to know is, I mean, if we do have to make cuts, if one of the first places we're going to cut is public safety, if that's where you guys are going, then I would say no. I don't want to proceed with this. But if that's not the first place you guys want to cut money, then I would be comfortable with it. Because it's not asking for additional money, it's just letting me operate within my budget.
Yep.
And right now, just year to date right now, we're at $83,505.45 in overtime. And for the whole entire year, we only had $78,044 budgeted for overtime.
Oh yeah, I've read the numbers, absolutely. That answers it. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Member Wohlhuter?
This is just more of a comment more than anything. I don't believe, our intentions on this assembly is to cut public safety first. Right now, there's an opportunity right now to be able to look at maybe holding off for just a little bit here until we see what the budget is really coming from the state, because eventually everybody's going to get a cut. I mean, do we want to take all of our monies and throw them into public safety, no matter what? Get rid of Parks and Rec, get rid of the library, get rid of everybody, and just make sure that we have a full staff of police officers? Or can we just hold off for another assembly meeting, let's say on the 26th, I believe is when it's going to be, and then maybe reconsider this again when we have a better idea of what the funding is going to be from the new governor. They've got a problem too. I mean, I trust me. I mean, I understand, that we need to keep the community safe, and I don't believe there's a single person up here that would not, fund public safety first. But I just want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position right now of committing funds towards somebody that we first of all, to answer Jeff's question, if he did have any question about this, is that person's not local. We're having to bring that person in. So if it was a local person we were going to use to fill that, then I wouldn't feel so bad about having to let them go. But that person, like Jay has said, has to move into town, and then we would have to, say goodbye to him again. So anyway, I'm going to vote no, but let's bring this up again on the 26th. As soon as I see what the budget looks like, and then I'll be more comfortable with making a decision for that myself. So I'm going to vote no for that reason.
Any other discussion? Member Meteor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I understand that, a lot of people think public safety is just the police department. We're also looking at some increases in the fire and EMS world, with the possibility of getting another person, an EMT too, who would be a trainer. So, we're looking at a couple things that are going to have big economic impacts to the budget. And I honestly hope we know something by the 26th, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. But, yeah, I'm voting for this again, as I said before.
Any other discussion? And I think there is some, accurate, comments made by the prior, assembly members' testimonies. The governor's budget is what we're waiting for on the 13th, 9 days from now, and that's just his proposed budget. It still has to go through the legislative process, and they might be there all year instead of just, there won't be 90 days that they'll come up with any answers from, what I'm seeing, what I've been hearing. But I am concerned about funding after talking with our senator, and people are, in the news so far. Well, the ferry system cut is one discussion. The $20 million that the legislature approved last session and signed by the governor, they're trying to take that back, and that has to go back through the legislature. But the senator's comment was just multiply that times 80 when the governor comes out with his budget. It'll be like a bomb coming down the chimney. So there's going to be some tough decisions to be made, and I am reluctant to vote for this. Not that I don't like police protection. And then another question about this overtime figure. How long has it been since we haven't had this position filled? And I can't remember the numbers Member Mucci put out, but were those overtime figures when we even had a full staff? Can you answer that, please, Mr. Kerr?
Okay, year-to-date, I don't know what it would have been with full staff. I can tell you that, but I can tell you from previous years, if that works for you, when we were full-staffed. Okay, and I'll just go back from the time when I came. So back in 2013, we had budgeted $86,157 for overtime, and we actually came in at $83,736. So we came in under the overtime budget, and then that's when we were fully staffed. In 2014, we came in. Our overtime total was $81,156, and we actually had budgeted at $83,000, so we were under our overtime. In 2015. We came in at $80,396, and we had budgeted $86,417. So we came in under that as well. And then in 2016, we had manpower issues, and so without the department being fully staffed, we came in at $93,766, and we only had budgeted $79,772. And then in 2017, we still were not fully staffed. We were at $132,635 in overtime, and we actually only had budgeted $84,000. And just last year, we came in at $155,214, and we only had budgeted $84,064. And those years we were over, we had to make cuts from within our department, and that's the guy not sending anyone to training, so we're getting behind on training, and not replacing certain items within. So we had to make cuts within, so we would come in under our budget overall. So that's what's been happening the past 3 years.
Okay, thanks for that picture of the past there. I've got a question for the manager. If this position is budgeted, like Member Mucci asked, so if we don't fill it, and we haven't filled it for a period of time, I don't know how long it's been vacant, we're not paying that person. So, correct? There's no one to pay. So that will not paying that officer's salary will offset this overtime?
Not totally.
Not totally, but I mean, it will work towards it.
One of the big questions is, and Chief Crow's numbers are right on target. Mm-hmm. It's the decision to replace or not replace isn't necessarily about how we currently operate. It's about a bigger answer than that, which is changing how we operate. So if you don't replace the position, long term, we have to change how we operate in the police department, which means whether it's 24-hour coverage or fewer people on at certain times or certain things we just stop doing, that's the big question. If we want to do status quo, we fill the position and we move forward with the same level of service. If we're forced to cut and this position's not replaced, then the next question is, here's what we're going to do to change how we offer services. And that's maybe the bigger question here. It's not necessarily the position. It's if you don't do this, then this is what we're going to have to talk about.
Okay, makes sense. Member Lynn, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. A couple of them. I don't think we'll know by next budget. I think we're going to be in shock mode the next time, but I don't think that this budget and the state's budget is going to get resolved till after we have to have a budget out. So I think we're going to be on an interim budget in the meantime. But my concern is just if we have to cutting $200,000 is one thing, cutting $500,000 is another one. And that requires my thinking to look at a whole bunch of different things we have to do, including changing business, the way we do business. And I agree with Kurt from the standpoint, I don't want to cut, but if I have to do something, I want to look at it as a package.
Mr. Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, one of the comments that I listened to Dunleavy the governor run on, was that he was going to fully fund, protect, the state troopers and then public safety. So I'd like to hold him to that, but I don't feel so confident that I'm going to see that in his budget yet. But if I do see that in his budget, then I'm going to be more confident about possibly allowing, to fill this position right now. But in the meantime, no, until I see it, I just can't guess what he's going to do. So, thank you.
Right. Just a little food for thought or something for us all to be thinking about, talking about these budget cuts with the state, PERS, Public Employees Retirement System obligation. Currently we pay 22% of the liabilities as a municipality. The state covers the other 78%. And I had the finance director today work up a number. If that goes up, every 1% that changes towards municipal liability, it's $52,000 to the borough. So 10%, if they tried to pass that in the legislature to raise the municipal, responsibility for that, it'd be $520,000. And who knows where this number is going to come out. That's why I'm kind of nervous about funding this at this time. So, is there any other discussion? Member Stanton Gregory?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just this discussion has kind of helped me frame this, and I guess just for those listening at home, I'm going to be voting for this today. Hearing the chief speak to that more directly about his comfort with the level of risk, he's a department head, and I'm going to trust his judgment on that. And so, yeah, I'll be voting yes today.
Okay. Any other input before we call the Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we all understand that we're going to see budget cuts coming from the state, and we're all concerned that they're going to be, they could be very drastic. I mean, I have no idea what's going to be cut, but that's why I'm having a hard time. I know we've taken stuff off the agenda, but if we're not going to have a discussion when we have time to have a reasonable conversation with our finance director and the city department heads and the city manager about what some of these cuts and additions are going to do to the budget. We're kind of going into the governor's budget meeting just kind of playing catch up and not really giving the community a chance to weigh in on some of the ideas that we may be having. So this is the time of the year as far as
I think the discussion, Member Mucci, is just the replacement of the police sergeant, not the other items.
Sure.
For the time being. Any other discussion on the replacement of the police sergeant? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Mark?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Randy?
No.
Bob?
No.
Okay, the replacement of the police sergeant position at this time fails with a 5 vote with Member Stanton Greger and Member Mucci voting in favor. That brings us to the next item under new business. It's also a budget item. Consultant for Mountain View Manor Assisted Living. I'd entertain a motion to approve this position for positive motion.
So moved.
Second for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Discussion on the hiring of a consultant for Mountain View Manor Assisted Living. Member Lynn?
I think the manager's got a good idea here, but what goes through my mind is the same as what the last discussion is. I would like to see if we could do it better, but I would also not like to spend the money at this time. Put it into next year's budget maybe and see where it comes out and go from there. So I'll be voting no because I would like to see it as part of next year's budget if we can put it in there if everything comes out right.
Member Walhooger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for you, Steve. What would a consultant cost?
I don't know. That's part of the problem.
So you're just asking for permission to put out an RFP to see?
Start the conversation more than anything. I don't want to ask for proposals from someone if we have no intention of even considering it. I think I told one assembly member the other day, $30,000 or $40,000 plus travel. That's, I hate to say, that's probably just guessing. We need some. The concept would be to bring somebody that's expert in this industry in, and tell us, either reconfirm that we're doing everything just perfect, which might be the truth. She then runs a really tight ship. Or there are ways that we can, maximize our revenue. I'd love to know a facility of our size that makes money. Do we have a problem that we're just not big enough? We have scratched and clawed to get to where we are, and we're losing ground, actually, to be honest with you. So.
Do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. This is back to you, Steve. I'm not one to just throw money away. If you think that we're already doing what we're doing, but how do we know we're doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, if we could save ourselves, if this could start making money, because right now, what was those numbers that we're investing in this? I see we're losing estimated almost $250,000 every year on this, and if we spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a consultant, they come in and they tell us what we could save $145,000. This conversation with whether or not we can fund another police department, or we have to cut funding to the library or cut funding to Parks and Rec or any of these other things, it would be a totally different conversation. So I see the logic in this, and I'm not opposed to it. So are you asking for us to let you get an RFP to see what it would cost?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is go out and talk to these people seriously and then get a proposal from them that, I can bring back or at least put into the budget. My challenge right now is, I needed to know, does the Assembly at least allow it to go that far? And that you're serious about, hey, like you said, if it comes back at that kind of a price range, yeah, we'd go forward with it. Because it'll take a while to get proposals.
Mm-hmm. Member Stanton Greger, do you have a comment?
Not at this time, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that was, my intent was just to kind of give Steve the leeway to kind of start looking into this and eventually bring back a number of what it would cost for a consultant and what would be involved in the consultant, what they would be looking at. I'm not asking for anybody to hire anybody. I just wanted, right now we don't have direction to the city manager about looking for a consultant or trying to sort out the parameters of what a consultant would be looking at. That's just kind of my intent here. Because I know it's going to take a while to do. It'll take you several months to find a consultant. Yeah. And I don't expect any recommendations to come from a consultant until next fall or next winter. But I figured I wanted to get this out here just for discussion to see if there was support for Steve to go looking for somebody. Thank you.
Member Stanton Greger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting for this today. I see it as a pretty low-risk thing to approve. As the manager was saying, it's not an area you know much about and on a variety of levels, and I think more information would be beneficial both to himself and then later on us as an assembly, so I'll be voting for this.
Member Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is by no means, for at least on my part, a vote of a lack of confidence in what our department head's doing for this project. I just think it's really good that we have an outside consultant, a different pair of eyes, step in and look at different departments from time to time and make sure we are as efficient as we can be, because that's what we're charged to do here, is to be efficient. And if we don't have somebody that looks at this, that has an expertise in that particular field, then we're never going to really know the answer. So I'm going to be voting for this.
Any other discussion? A question for the manager, I guess. The way this is worded and presented to us today, are you assuming that if we vote for this, you're going to hire a consultant, or are you just going to get RFPs?
No. Yeah. What I would do is I'd get proposals. Number one, I have to find people. We have kind of not been great at being able to find people that actually do this in this line of work. But I've got a couple of leads. We'll follow up on those. We'll actually get formal proposals. I'll evaluate those, make sure I understand what they are and what they would cost. Because sometimes proposals are hard to figure out what the end cost would be. We bring that back to the assembly. For assembly to approve, whether it's putting it in the following year's, next year's budget, or whether it's, a supplemental budget item for this year. But that would come back to the assembly before that decision would be made.
Thank you. Member Lynn?
Yeah. Procedural question. I was under the impression that this particular item was to actually fund it, and that's where I was coming from. So do we need a motion on the table to amend or
I would feel more comfortable for that. I'm following what you're saying, because I would be voting no for this for the way it's presented, because in my mind, this is to approve hiring a consultant to do the evaluation of assisted living, not to have the manager go out for RFPs. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, I don't even have numbers to give you, so you couldn't vote on approving something because there's no numbers for you to vote on.
Yeah, that is what I would like to see, is some firm numbers that I can approve or disapprove in my mind, or at least vote one way or another.
Okay, then I would move to allow the manager to go out for to look at an RFP to fund I'm trying to look at the consultant for the Mountain View Manor Assisted Living.
That's an amendment?
I'm sorry.
Amendment to the motion that we made was to fund. This amendment would be
I'm asking just for it to go with a consultant to and produce an RFP that we could look at and see whether we want to go forward.
Changing the language, Roger. I would second that.
Yeah.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor to give the manager direction to send out an RFP for request for proposals on the cost of a consultant to run the Mountain View Manor. Does that make sense? Okay.
Cool.
So, Member Muti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So do we need to defeat the first motion?
We can amend it to, in my mind, if somebody's all right with that, if we vote in the positive on this amendment, it will give the manager direction to send out an RFP.
Great.
Yeah,
Is that right, members?
Yeah, as a clarify, but because we're not drastically changing the thrust of what we're going for in the main motion, I think it works just fine.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Danielle, are you following us? Good.
To amend it.
Okay, so this is on the amendment to allow the manager to send out an RFP for this consultant of the business taking place at assisted living to go over, give us a better idea. Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, that was a vote on the amendment. Now we will vote on the motion as amended. And is there any more discussion? I would think not, but maybe. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, the motion as amended to hire or to go out for an RFP for a consultant for Mountain View Manor Assisted Living has passed unanimously. Communications, the only communication I would have, if people wanted it to be read, is that letter from Senator Murkowski, but it's It's on the website if anybody in the public wants to read it. Any other communications from any other assembly members? Okay. With the amendment to the agenda, that brings us to item 17E, recognitions. Are there any recognitions? Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have two of them. I'd like to recognize Irene Littleton and the Stedman Elementary students for their aggressive campaign against dog poop everywhere in the community. It's something you can hear the laughter at home because we all know this, and there's no place that has more garbage cans than Sandy Beach, and yet it's still covered with dog poop. And so the Stedman Elementary students decided to put bags all around the elementary school playground so that people can take it, to make it easy for people. And these are kids that should have a clean place to play. And Irene, I want to recognize for writing a letter to the editor imploring our fellow citizens to manage their dogs. And I'm going to throw in a suggestion that I brainstormed with this. As a dog owner myself, I go out, use the facilities, clean up after my dog, but I'm sure I've missed one along the way. So here's how you fix this problem. Every time you go out as a dog owner, grab 3. That way, even if you miss one sometime, you're going to be... The law of math does not lie. You'll eliminate the problem if you take that approach to it. So, food for thought, and thank you, Irene and Stedman Elementary students.
Okay, Member Meach, you have recognition today?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank the local search and rescue group and the Coast Guard guys Coast Guard folks for going out and looking for that plane last week. They put in a lot of hours in some kind of crummy conditions, and just wanted to know that they're appreciated. The other one is I just wanted to thank the sanitation crew. Last week I had an opportunity to ride with the recycling truck to ride around town and pick up recycling, and it was very informative for me. It was a very interesting exercise, and I learned a lot riding with those guys, and we'll talk about it some more here during our recycling and solid waste meeting later on in the week. But I just want to say thank you and appreciate Chris Cotta setting that up for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other recognitions? Seeing none, I'd like to back up, if you don't mind, to the mayor's report after Member Mucci's recognition of the search and rescue. That brings to mind what I intended to add to the mayor's report, but I didn't, is I'm sure it's from the whole community, but our condolences go out to the Guardian, the 3 people they lost in the plane wreck last week. So that brings us to item 18, which will be an executive session. So we will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss the land swap at Petromarine.
So moved. Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to that effect so that we cover some bases here. I'd like to make a motion that we go into negotiations and consider all of our options.
Well, yeah, go into executive,
Yep.
executive session to discuss it. Okay.
But I want to make sure that we just throw that in.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we'll adjourn temporarily. Let's take a 5-minute break.
And at this point, can we invite a few people to